My name is Naomi. The night my marriage cracked did not begin with shouting. It began with a poem. Victor always carried a leather notebook. He wrote on napkins and on the backs of receipts. He told me that words were his second breath. He told me I was why they came at all. For years I believed him. On our 10th anniversary he posted a poem online. Family sent hearts. Friends tagged me. My mother called and cried. I opened the post and read every line slowly, as if each sentence were a step back into our first years. At first the poem felt familiar. A kitchen at dusk. A storm that passed. A woman who steadied him in a hard season. I smiled. I thought, this is me. Then I reached the center of the verse and my breath stopped. There was a name. 3 syllables. Not mine. It was hers. I had heard that name in small ways. A coworker. A team lead. A person who sent late emails. He laughed when I asked questions. He changed the subject. I let the subject change. I wanted peace more than proof. But the poem did not want peace. It wanted truth. Her name sat in the middle of his vow like a lit match. It lit our kitchen. It lit my trust. It lit a path I did not want to walk. The comments praised devotion. They called me lucky. I watched my friends send hearts to a lie. I watched my mother write that love like this lasts forever. I put the phone down. Picked it up again. The name was still there. Upstairs Victor slept. His breath was slow and easy. I sat on the rug by the window with the phone in my lap. I read the poem again. I spoke the 3 syllables once. The word hung in the air like a stain. I did not break. I did not wake him. I listened to the house settle. The fridge hummed. A pipe ticked. Outside a car door shut. An ordinary night. Only my life was no longer ordinary. He had written vows to another woman and hung them in the public square. He had invited strangers to clap for a page that erased me. He had used my name as a mask for hers and then forgotten to tie the strings. I took a screenshot of the post. I took another of the comments and the timestamp. My hand shook, but the image is saved. I opened a new folder named Poem and placed the screenshots inside. I held the phone to my chest until my heartbeat steadied. Memory unspooled. Late meetings that ran too long. Trips moved at the last second. A sudden shower when he came home smelling of a scent I did not own. Suspicion had always floated past me like ash. Tonight it fell like snow. I stood and turned on the smallest kitchen light. I poured water into a glass and watched it rise. I thought about the year my father was sick and Victor read to him in the hospital. I thought about this year and the way he guarded his phone. Person can be 2 stories at once. I finally understood that. I told myself a rule. No decisions while the heart is on fire. I would not confront him at 2 in the morning. I would move slow. I would breathe. I would gather what words cannot argue with. I wrote 3 lines on a yellow note and pressed it to the inside of a cabinet door. 1. Save everything. 2. Ask nothing until ready. 3. Let truth choose the hour. I went back to the bedroom and slid under the sheet. Victor lay on his side, his hand open, the wedding band bright against the dark. I stared at that ring and could not decide whether it was a promise or a story with an ending I had not seen. At dawn I made coffee and read the poem once more. The name was still there. The comments were louder. When Victor came down he kissed my hair and reached for a mug. He asked if I slept well. I said yes. He told me he might be late. I nodded. The air between us felt like glass. After he left I saved the post as a file in case he tried to change it. I printed the page and slipped it into the back of a cookbook. I wrote the date in the margin and closed the cover. Then I stood in the kitchen and listened to the clock. Each tick was a step forward. Each talk was a door closing behind me. I was not who I had been the night before. I was someone learning where the lights were hung. The poem had given me my opening. It had handed me a thread. I would follow it into the dark with a careful hand. I would not run. I would not hide. I would not shout. I would gather. And when the house was full of proof, I would choose the hour. I would walk into his light and let the truth speak for me. Because a poem can be edited. A name can be swapped. A speech can be rehearsed. But the quiet record of a life cannot be undone once it is written. I turned off the light. The window held the pale sky. Somewhere a bus sighed and moved on. I felt the hinge inside me set. This is my beginning. and I will not waste it. The day after the poem, I walked through my house like a ghost. Every corner looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. The rug under my feet, the photos on the wall, even the air seemed touched by betrayal. Victor acted as though life was unchanged. He kissed me before work, whistled while tying his tie, and left a coffee ring on the counter like always. He carried his notebook under his arm, as if words were still sacred. But I knew better now. His words belonged to someone else. I spent that morning replaying the poem in my mind. Each line felt sharper. You steadied me in spring. You lifted me higher than I had ever known. The world thought those words belonged to me, but they didn't. They belonged to her. At noon I forced myself outside. I walked to the small cafe near Victor's office, the one he always mentioned. The barista greeted me kindly, but my eyes went to the back corner booth. Empty. I imagined him sitting there with her, scribbling in his notebook, letting her edit his lines. My stomach turned. That evening I searched his desk. Not recklessly, not with panic. I moved carefully, as if the truth were fragile. In the top drawer, under stacks of receipts, I found a crumpled sheet of paper. A draft. The same poem he had posted, but with edits. Whole lines scratched out, words rewritten. And there again her name, crossed out this time, replaced by mine in careful script. My hand trembled as I held the page. He had tried to erase her from the record, but not carefully enough. The ghost of her letters lingered. Proof that I wasn't imagining any of this. When he came home, I forced myself to act normal. I made pasta. I poured wine. I listened to him talk about work. But every sentence tasted sour. I wanted to ask, who is she to you? But I stayed silent. Later in bed, he kissed me goodnight. His lips were warm, his voice gentle. I love you, Naomi. The words fell flat. The next day I searched online. I found her profile without trying hard, public photos, smiling selfies, captions filled with quotes about truth and hidden love. She had even liked the poem. My stomach knotted tighter. One post stopped me cold. A photo of a necklace. A delicate chain with a small diamond pendant. The caption read, "To my muse forever." Dozens of hearts beneath it. I recognized the style. Months ago, I had pointed out that very necklace in a shop window. Victor had said it was too expensive. Now she wore it. I saved the post. I printed it. I added it to my folder. The evidence was no longer just in words. It was in gifts, in gestures, in the small cracks that widened every day. That evening Victor said he was working late. I nodded, though my chest burned. Hours later I drove past his office. His car wasn't there. I circled the block searching. Then I saw it, parked outside a quiet restaurant. Through the window I caught a glimpse. Victor leaning across the table, smiling, his hand covering hers. She laughed, her eyes glowing in the candlelight. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My world tilted, but I forced myself to breathe. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo from the street. Blurry but clear enough. Proof. I drove home in silence, my heart pounding with every mile. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the decision was made. I would not confront him with half-truths. I would not hand him the chance to gaslight me into silence. I would gather everything. I would build a case so undeniable that even he couldn't escape it. As I slid the restaurant photo into my folder that night, I whispered aloud, steady as stone. This is only the beginning. The photo from the restaurant stayed on my nightstand, tucked into the folder with the draft of his poem and the screenshot of the necklace. It was enough to confirm the truth, but not enough to end the lie. If I confronted him now, he would twist my anger into paranoia. He would claim she was just a friend, that the name was an old draft, that the photo was innocent. No, I would not give him that chance. I needed more. The next morning, when Victor left for work, I opened his desk drawers again. In the back, beneath piles of receipts and old envelopes, I found a small box. Inside was a receipt dated only a week earlier. A hotel suite, midnight checkout, 2 glasses of champagne. My hands trembled as I slipped the paper into my folder. That evening, while he showered, I sat on the bed with his laptop. His password was the same as always, our wedding date. The irony nearly made me laugh. I typed it in and the screen unlocked. At first, the file seemed harmless. Drafts of speeches, old bills, scattered notes. But then I found a folder tucked inside another, titled Muse. My chest tightened. Inside were dozens of photos. Not of us. Not of our life together. Photos of her. Serena. Smiling at a cafe. Sipping wine at a dinner table. Staring at the camera with the kind of intimacy reserved for someone who believes she is loved. Some photos were candid, taken from angles that made it clear Victor had been watching her. Others were posed, clearly meant for him. I copied the folder to a drive and closed the laptop, my hands shaking. By then my binder was growing thicker. Screenshots. Receipts. Photos. Each piece added weight, both to the pages and to my resolve. But I needed financial proof, something no words could erase. So I checked our joint bank account. The numbers never lie. Small withdrawals appeared, neat round amounts, 500 here, 800 there, always on Fridays. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize. I traced them, cross-referencing with dates on receipts. Every transfer matched a gift. A necklace, flowers, a boutique dinner. I printed the records, hole-punched the pages, and slid them into the binder. Still suspicion nagged me. I wanted to see them together again, undeniable. One Friday evening I told Victor the first was going to bed early. Instead, I waited until I heard his car pull out of the driveway. I grabbed my keys and followed at a distance. My heart hammered with every turn. He drove across town to a small hotel. He parked, stepped out, checked his phone and waited. Minutes later she appeared. Dressed in red this time, her hair falling over her shoulders. She smiled as she walked into his arms. He kissed her. I snapped photos from my car, the lens shaky but steady enough to capture the truth. Him. Her. Together. I drove home with the proof sitting in my camera, my chest tight but my mind steady. When I slipped the printed photos into the binder that night, I whispered my 3 rules again. Save everything. Ask nothing until ready. Let truth choose the hour. The binder was no longer just a collection of papers. It was a case. A record. A weapon. But evidence alone wasn't enough. Victor was clever and Serena was bold. They had humiliated me once already, she in white, he in silence. If I wanted revenge, I needed more than proof. I needed witnesses. Allies. People who would stand beside me when the mask fell. And so, as I closed the binder and slid it back into the closet, another vow settled inside me. Tomorrow I would not just gather. Tomorrow I would reach out. Because the truth was ready. And soon I would not carry it alone. The binder was getting heavier, its spine groaning when I closed it. It no longer felt like a secret I carried. It felt like a weapon waiting to be used. But a weapon in one pair of hands can be overpowered. If I wanted to strike once and strike clean, I needed support. I needed people who would not let me falter. The first person I turned to was my best friend, Claire. She had been beside me since college, the kind of friend who could read my silence better than my words. I called her on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Come over, I said. My voice was flat, almost mechanical. When she arrived, I didn't waste time with tea or pleasantries. I pulled the binder from the closet and set it on the table between us. Claire opened it, her fingers slow, careful. She turned each page, screenshots of his messages, the necklace, the receipts, the photos of him with Serena. Her face changed as she read. Her lips tightened, her eyes hardened. By the time she reached the end, she looked up at me with fire. Naomi, she whispered. This isn't just an affair. This is cruelty. He's parading her like a trophy while the world calls you blessed. If you confront him alone, he'll talk circles until you doubt yourself. You need to expose him where he cannot escape. Her words sank into me like stones. I nodded slowly. That's what I intend to do. The second ally was my brother, Michael. He had always been protective, sometimes to the point of suffocation, but I needed his strength. We met at a diner late in the evening. I slid the binder across the table. He flipped through it faster than Claire had, but his reaction was no less fierce. His jaw tightened. His fist slammed onto the table so hard the glasses rattled. He did this at your anniversary? Michael's voice shook with anger. He let her wear white, and then he wrote her name into a poem for the world to read? No, I cut in sharply. You won't throw punches. That's what he'd expect. I don't want violence. I want precision. I want him stripped of his mask in front of the very people he wants to impress. Michael's eyes burned, but he nodded. Fine. But I'll be there. When the moment comes, if he tries to shout you down, if he even thinks about silencing you, I'll stop him. It wasn't the quiet support I craved, but it was the kind of fire I might need. The third ally was professional. I needed someone who understood the law, someone who could turn evidence into leverage. I was referred to a lawyer named Evelyn, who had built a reputation handling messy divorces with clean precision. Her office was orderly, neat stacks of files, pins aligned perfectly, not a paper out of place. She listened carefully as I laid the binder before her, explaining each page. She asked questions, sharp and direct. I answered all of them. When she closed the binder, her eyes were steady. Naomi, you have enough here to file immediately. Infidelity, financial misconduct, misappropriation of marital funds. Your case is solid. If you want, I can have papers drawn up this week. The word divorce lodged in my chest like a stone. Heavy. Real. I wasn't ready to sign, not yet. Not now, I whispered. He still hides behind his reputation. People think he's devoted. I want them to see the truth first. When I leave, I want the world to know exactly why. Evelyn studied me for a moment, then nodded. Then keep gathering. Document every word, every dollar. When you're ready, I'll make sure the law is on your side. I left her office with her card in my pocket, its edges sharp against my palm. Felt like a key. That night, Victor lay beside me, scrolling on his phone. His lips curved faintly, his face lit by the glow of another message that wasn't from me. He kissed my shoulder, murmured, "Good night, Naomi," and drifted into easy sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the lawyer's card on the nightstand, Claire's words in my ears, Michael's promise echoing like thunder. I wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. I was building a circle, a shield, an army. Victor thought his notebook and his charm could protect him. Serena thought her white dresses could humiliate me into silence. But they had underestimated the power of patience. The binder was no longer just mine. It was ours. And with Claire, Michael, and Evelyn beside me, I was no longer walking toward the truth alone. Once I had allies, the fog inside me began to clear. Pain was still there, sharp as glass, but it was no longer the only thing I felt. Now there was direction. Now there was fire with shape. Victor believed he had me cornered in silence, but he had given me the stage himself. A week after the poem, he announced that he had been chosen to headline a literary showcase. A gathering of writers, colleagues, and donors where he would read his most important work. He spoke about it with pride, his eyes glowing. "They'll finally see what I've been building toward," he said over dinner, twirling pasta as though nothing was wrong. "I want you in the front row, Naomi. You're the reason for everything I've written." I smiled, a smile that tasted like iron. Yes, Victor, I thought. I will sit in the front row. But not to applaud. That night, Claire and I sat at my dining table with the binder spread open like a battlefield map. "This showcase," she said, "is the perfect moment. He'll be expecting worship. Give him exposure instead." We began building the plan. Step 1. Collect the evidence into a story no one could deny. I wasn't going to scream accusations. I was going to present facts piece by piece like a mirror too clear to look away from. Claire suggested turning the binder into a slideshow, photos, receipts, screenshots. If he tries to talk over you, the images will speak louder. Step 2. Secure the setup. Michael arranged to handle the projector and laptop. "If he tries to pull the plug," he said, "he'll have to get through me first." His voice was steady, protective, a wall I could lean against. Step 3. Protect myself legally. Evelyn reviewed every document, every receipt, every transfer. "Stick to facts," she advised. "Let him incriminate himself by reaction. Don't give him a single word he can twist." I followed her advice. I trimmed away commentary. No accusations. Only dates, transactions, images, words he had written with his own hand. The truth was damning enough. Each evening, while Victor scribbled in his notebook in the study, I rehearsed my lines quietly in the kitchen. I didn't want rage in my voice. Rage can be dismissed. I wanted calm precision. I wanted the audience to hear me and know I had nothing to hide. One night, I stood before the mirror, my green dress draped across the hanger. I whispered the words. To truth, the kind that cannot be edited away. I imagined the audience. Victor glowing with pride, Serena waiting in the wings, their masks intact. And then the lights shifting. The projector flickering to life. Their private words suddenly public, larger than either of them could contain. The image was enough to keep me steady. Still, there were practical pieces to arrange. Claire secured the files on multiple drives, uploaded them to a hidden cloud account, even emailed me backups. He won't bury this, she promised. Even if he smashes the laptop, the truth will survive. Michael visited the venue the day before, mapping exits, testing outlets. He texted me a photo of the stage. Ready when you are. Evelyn drafted the first divorce papers, holding them in reserve. When you finish this, she said, we'll file. Public exposure will make his defense weaker. Piece by piece the plan solidified. Victor, oblivious, rehearsed at night. I overheard lines drifting through the door. Grand speeches about loyalty, devotion, muses who saved him. Lies polished to sound like scripture. He believed the showcase would crown him. He didn't realize it would bury him. On the morning of the event, I slipped the binder into my bag and touched the folded note still taped inside the cabinet. Save everything. Ask nothing until ready. Let truth choose the hour. The hour had been chosen. When Victor kissed me goodbye, his smile smug with anticipation, I smiled back. Good luck tonight, I said softly. He had no idea what luck would mean. The evening of the showcase arrived draped in silver rain. Streetlights glowed against the wet pavement as I stepped out of the cab with my bag clutched tight. The building was alive with chatter, umbrellas folding, coats being shaken dry. People gathered in clusters, buzzing about Victor and his masterpiece. He greeted guests at the entrance with the ease of a politician, his arm slipping around my shoulders as though we were still the picture of devotion. Cameras flashed, compliments poured. Naomi, you must be so proud, one woman said, squeezing my hand. I smiled faintly, though pride had long since turned to steel. Inside, the hall glittered. Rows of chairs fanned out before the stage, which was framed with crimson curtains. At its center stood a podium, a glass of water, and a microphone waiting like a witness. Claire sat in the fourth row, her laptop balanced on her knees, the presentation files ready. Michael lingered by the side of the stage, arms folded, guarding the projector like a sentinel. Evelyn wasn't present, but her number glowed at the top of my phone in case I needed it. I should have felt calm. Everything was in place. But unease prickled at me the moment I saw her. Serena. She was there in the third row, her dress once again impossibly white, shimmering under the stage lights. She sat straight-backed, her chin lifted, her smile faint but sharp. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. Her stare was a challenge, a reminder that she believed herself untouchable. Whispers already rippled. That's her. Why would she sit so close? Some looked at me with pity, others with curiosity, but no one dared approach. Victor noticed her too. His face flickered for only an instant before he recovered, grinning, raising a hand in acknowledgement. He had invited her, bold, reckless, certain he could juggle both devotion and betrayal in plain sight. The program began with minor speakers, warm introductions, and polite applause. My heart pounded harder with each moment. Claire tapped her laptop, testing the slides silently. Michael checked the cables. Everything worked. Then Victor was called to the stage. He strode up confidently, notebook in hand, his voice steady as he thanked the audience. They leaned forward, eager, trusting. He began with a preamble about honesty in art, about love as inspiration. Every poem I've written, he said, has been born from devotion. And tonight, I dedicate this reading to the woman who has been my anchor. His eyes landed on me. The crowd applauded warmly, some even turning to smile at me. For a heartbeat, I felt heat rise in my face, not pride but fury. Then he opened the notebook, and my stomach dropped. The poem he began to read wasn't the one I had seen. It wasn't the one he posted online. It was new, freshly written. He had rewritten everything. Every line carefully designed to erase her, to replace her with me. He spoke my name again and again, weaving it into the verses like a shield. The audience glowed with admiration. How beautiful, someone whispered. Such devotion. Claire glanced at me, her eyes wide. The evidence on her laptop was still damning, but now if I unleashed it, the contrast might backfire. He had painted himself as the perfect husband, a man devoted so thoroughly that any accusation might look like spite. Serena shifted in her chair, her smile fading. He had betrayed her too, at least in the script he read tonight. She looked at him with narrowed eyes, her knuckles white against her lap. Victor's voice swelled, grand and sure. He was rewriting the narrative in real time, trying to paint me as his muse, his savior, his forever. He wanted to blind them with performance before I could cut through with truth. My pulse thundered. If I acted too soon, I risked looking bitter, jealous, unhinged. If I waited too long, his mask would harden, and my proof might be doubted. He raised his glass toward me as the reading reached its climax. To Naomi, he declared. To 10 years of loyalty, to the love that keeps me alive. The crowd erupted in applause, rising to their feet. All eyes turned toward me. Serena's gaze burned into my skin. Claire's hand hovered over the keyboard, waiting for my signal. Michael tensed by the projector, ready to defend the truth. And I stood there, caught between silence and revelation, the plan trembling in my hands. The applause thundered through the hall, echoing like waves against stone. Victor bowed his head slightly, drinking in their admiration. He believed he had saved himself, that his carefully rewritten poem had mended every crack. His eyes found mine in the front row, his smile wide and certain. He thought I would nod. He thought I would clap. He thought the story was his again. I rose from my chair. The scrape of wood against the floor cut through the ovation. People turned, expecting me to beam with pride, maybe even join him on stage. Instead, I lifted my glass slowly, my voice calm but sharp enough to pierce the air. To truth, I said. The kind that cannot be rewritten. The room stilled. The applause faltered. Victor's smile froze, confusion flickering in his eyes. Serena leaned forward in her chair, her white dress glowing under the lights, her lips parting in a knowing smirk. I pressed the small remote in my palm. The projector hummed, the curtain glowed, and the first slide appeared. A screenshot of the original poem. The one with Serena's name carved boldly in the middle. The timestamp, the comments all preserved. Gasps swept the audience. Heads craned. Whispers rose like wind. Victor stepped forward, his voice breaking. That draft was nothing. I pressed again. The next slide, receipts. A necklace engraved "Forever Yours," charged to our joint account. A hotel booking for 2 with champagne at midnight. Flowers delivered under her name. Dates aligned neatly with the nights he had claimed to be working late. Murmurs grew louder. Disbelief shifted to anger. A woman in the back hissed. He used their money. Victor's face reddened. He gripped the podium, his knuckles white. These are lies. Taken out of context. I pressed again. Photos filled the screen. Him leaning across a candlelit table, his hand over Serena's. The two of them outside a hotel, her red dress sharp against the night. Blurry but undeniable. The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, curses. People turned in their seats, some shaking their heads, others glaring at Victor with open disgust. Serena shifted, her smirk gone. Still she tried to salvage pride. So what? She called out, her voice high and brittle. He loves me. He always has. You're just the one holding on. The crowd recoiled. Several people booed. One of Victor's colleagues shouted, "You wore white to their anniversary. Have you no shame?" Serena's face flushed crimson. Victor slammed the notebook shut. Enough. His voice boomed through the microphone. This is private. This is between us. Naomi, you've embarrassed yourself. I stepped closer to the stage, my voice steady, clear, carrying without a microphone. No, Victor. This became public the moment you used our life as a mask for hers. You paraded your devotion for applause, but you forgot one thing. Truth doesn't vanish when you rewrite it. It waits. I pressed one final time. The last slide appeared. The draft of his poem with Serena's name written and then crossed out, replaced clumsily by mine. Proof not just of betrayal but of deceit. Silence crashed down. Heavy. Absolute. The audience stared at him, not me. Their admiration gone, replaced by contempt. His mentor, seated in the second row, stood slowly and shook his head. I told you poetry is truth and beauty. he said, voice breaking. But you have turned truth into a lie. I cannot respect this. He walked out. Others followed, the sound of doors slamming like judgment. Victor's mask collapsed. His shoulders sagged, his face pale, his mouth opening and closing without words. He looked at me not with anger now, but with desperation. But I was already lowering the remote, sliding it back into my clutch. My work was done. For 10 years, I said, voice steady, I was your muse. But tonight I am the author of your ending. The audience gasped again, then fell into a silence so deep it felt sacred. And for the first time in years I felt free. The last slide still glowed on the curtain. Serena's name scrawled and then crossed out, my own scribbled over it like an afterthought. The hall was silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Victor gripped the podium, his jaw clenched, his face slick with sweat. Then the silence shattered. Gasps became murmurs. Murmurs became voices. My God! Did you see the receipts? He wrote another woman's name into a love poem and published it? 10 years wasted. The words swirled through the audience like fire catching dry grass. People twisted in their seats, glancing at me, glaring at Victor, whispering to one another with disbelief sharpened into anger. Serena stood, her white dress glowing beneath the lights. She tried to sound calm but her voice cracked. You're all hypocrites. You think he's the only one who's ever loved twice? At least he had the courage to. Courage? A man interrupted, rising from the back row. He humiliated his wife in front of the world. That's not courage. That's cowardice. Applause broke, not for Victor but for the man's words. Serena flushed, her mouth snapping shut. Victor's hand shook against the podium. Naomi, he stammered. Please, we can discuss this at home. You didn't have to. No, my brother Michael thundered from beside the stage, his voice carrying across the hall. You don't get to tell her where this belongs. You made it public when you wrote for your mistress and pretended it was for your wife. The crowd erupted again, this time with nods, with words of agreement. Someone shouted, Shame! Another hissed, Fraud! Victor turned desperate. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. The poem was only a mistake. The receipts, those were. Stop lying, Claire's voice cut in from the fourth row. She rose to her feet, her hands trembling but her eyes blazing. I've watched Naomi carry your lies for months. We've seen the proof. Everyone has. Nothing you say can erase it. All eyes swung back to me. I felt the weight of their stares, but it no longer pressed me down. It lifted me. For the first time I wasn't carrying the truth alone. My mother stood in the aisle, her face pale but resolute. She looked at Victor with eyes that once adored him. You let me call you son, she said softly, her voice trembling. And all the while, you were writing someone else into our family. Victor stumbled back from the podium as though struck. No, But she had already turned, walking toward me. She took my hand, squeezing it tight, her touch an anchor. The audience began to move. Some rose and left in disgust, shaking their heads. Others stayed, murmuring louder, their words circling Victor and Serena like vultures. Serena tried once more, her voice shrill. He doesn't need you, Naomi. He loves me. He always has. Her words fell flat. A woman in the front row laughed bitterly. Then why does he still cling to his wife's name in public? He won't even claim you out loud. The blow landed. Serena's face collapsed. She grabbed her purse, muttered curses and stormed out, the white dress swishing like a flag of surrender. Victor reached out as if to stop her, but she didn't look back. He stood alone on the stage, abandoned by the one he had written into his lies. The host of the event finally stepped forward, his face pale, his voice low but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, tonight was meant to celebrate integrity in art. What we've witnessed instead is deceit. This event is concluded. The microphone was cut. The stage lights dimmed. The hum of voices grew louder as people collected their coats, their disdain trailing behind them. Victor remained frozen, staring at the empty doorway where Serena had fled, his pride unraveling thread by thread. I gathered my bag, the remote still warm in my hand, and stood. Claire joined me instantly. Michael placed a protective hand on my shoulder. My mother walked beside me. Together we moved toward the doors, past rows of faces that no longer looked at me with pity but with respect. I did not look back at Victor. I didn't need to. He had wanted applause. He had wanted admiration. Instead, he was left with silence, contempt, and the sound of doors closing in his face. The morning after the showcase, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table as though it belonged to someone new. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed endlessly. Messages from colleagues who had been in the audience. Notes from friends who had seen the videos online. Even strangers, some congratulating me, some offering sympathy. Clips of the event were already circulating. Victor's face caught in the harsh light of truth. The comments under them were merciless. 10 years wasted on a fraud. She handled it with such grace. He'll never publish another word without shame. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I opened my binder one last time. The pages that had once felt like chains now looked like closed chapters. I ran my hand across the cover, then shut it gently. It had done its work. Claire came by mid-morning, carrying pastries and coffee. She hugged me so tightly I almost cried. "Naomi," she whispered, "you were brilliant. You didn't just expose him. You showed strength I don't think even he imagined you had." Michael arrived not long after, still fiery, still protective. "If he even tries to contact you," he growled, "he'll have to go through me." His presence was both thunder and shield. My mother called, her voice soft. "I am proud of you, my daughter. You chose truth over silence. You chose yourself." Those words steadied me more than anything else. By the afternoon, the inevitable happened. Victor showed up. He didn't knock with confidence anymore. He knocked like a man begging to be let into his own life. I opened the door only halfway. He looked wrecked. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, his eyes swollen with lack of sleep. The man who had stood tall on stage the night before now looked small, broken. "Naomi," he whispered. "Please, let me explain." I folded my arms. Explain? Which part? The poem? The receipts? The hotel? Or the necklace you bought for her when you told me we couldn't afford it? His lips parted, but no words came. He sagged against the doorway, his voice cracking. "I made mistakes. I was weak. But I love you. We can fix this. Please, don't throw away 10 years. I shook my head slowly. "You threw them away when you wrote her name where mine belonged. You threw them away when you paraded her in white at my anniversary. I'm not the one who ended this. You are." His shoulders slumped. Tears pooled in his eyes. "I've lost everything. My colleagues won't return my calls. Publishers are distancing themselves. Serena, she won't even speak to me. I don't know where else to go." I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just clarity. "Go anywhere," I said firmly. "Just not here." I closed the door gently but firmly, the latch clicking into place like a seal. Later, Evelyn called. Her voice was crisp. "Naomi, the evidence you presented publicly has given you leverage. We can file for divorce immediately. Financial restitution for the money he spent on her is straightforward. You will come out stronger both legally and personally." I took a deep breath, then answered the word I had been afraid of until now. "Yes. File." That evening, I sat by the window with a notebook of my own. For the first time, the page wasn't heavy with suspicion or fear. I wrote down everything I had learned. Patience, truth, the importance of allies. I wrote about the moment the projector lit up and silence fell over the hall. I wrote about walking out with my head high while he stood abandoned. By the time I set the pen down, the sun had set, painting the sky deep gold. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow the papers would be in motion. Tomorrow I would be free. Weeks passed, and the noise around Victor slowly faded into static. He had become a ghost in the very circles where he once demanded to shine. The showcase, once meant to crown him, was now remembered only as the night his mask shattered. For me, life moved in smaller, steadier steps. The divorce papers were signed without a fight. Evelyn guided the process with calm precision, ensuring I received my share of assets and restitution for the money Victor had wasted on Serena. There were no battles in court, no drawn-out scenes. He was too broken to resist, too exposed to argue. The day I received the final documents, I walked into my kitchen and pulled the yellow note from the inside of the cabinet. Save everything. Ask nothing until ready. Let truth choose the hour. I held it for a long time, then slipped it into my notebook. It was no longer a warning. It was a reminder of what I had done, and what I had survived. I began to reclaim myself piece by piece. I painted the study in bright colors and turned it into a small studio. Where Victor once scribbled lines for another woman, I filled the room with my own writing, truths, reflections, even small poems of my own. They weren't polished. They didn't need to be. They were mine. Claire visited often, bringing laughter and warmth back into my days. Michael checked in like clockwork, protective as always but finally smiling again. My mother, proud and relieved, told me she could sleep knowing her daughter had chosen strength over silence. One evening I sat alone on the porch as the sun sank low, painting the sky in soft rose and amber. I thought about the woman I had been months ago, the one who whispered yes to every excuse, who swallowed doubt to keep the peace. That woman was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone steady. The greatest revenge is not rage. Rage burns fast and leaves you empty. The greatest revenge is walking away with your head high, your truth intact, and your future wide open. Victor will carry the weight of his lies forever. Every time he lifts a pen, people will wonder who he is writing for. Every time he posts a line, whispers will follow. That is his burden. Mine is lighter. I carry only myself, my freedom, and the knowledge that I chose honesty when lies tried to consume me. So if you are listening now, if you have ever stared at a truth too heavy to carry, know this. You are stronger than the silence you've been given. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight with fists to win. Gather your truth. Hold it close. And when the moment comes, let it speak for you. Because masks always fall. And when they do, the world will see what you already knew. Tonight, I raise a glass not to anniversaries or to poems written with stolen names. I raise it to freedom, to the courage of patience, to the strength that grows when you choose yourself. This is my story, and now it is finished. But yours is still being written.